The story begins with the car driving through a dense forest where we meet Nina. She had recently arrived in the United States on a visitor visa, but a serious problem with her legal documents had put her in a difficult situation. Until the issue was resolved, she could not stay in America legally. To fight her case and pay her lawyer's fees, she desperately needed money. That's why her friend Mary, an immigration agent, was taking her to a job offered by an elderly man named Luther. Nina was terrified and anxious because she was completely new to this country and had no idea what to expect. When Nina asked about Luther's personality, Mary tried to calm her down. She told her that Luther was a kind man, that several women had worked for him before, and that all of them had been happy there. Mary assured her that Luther would take good care of her. During the drive, Nina wasn't feeling well, but she chose to ignore it. The journey was long, so they stopped in the middle of the forest to rest for a while. Suddenly, a loud scream echoed through the trees. Nina panicked, grabbed her little daughter, and ran toward the car. At that moment, a man covered in blood came running toward them, begging for help. Nina was already frightened, so she immediately shoved him away and locked the car door. Without wasting a second, Mary sped the car out of there. Nina felt guilty and thought the man might have truly needed help. But Mary explained that the area was extremely dangerous. According to her, groups living deep in the forest often fought with each other, and getting involved could cost them their lives. After a very long drive, they finally reached Luther's house. The place immediately felt strange to Nina. The house stood in a deserted area with no other buildings anywhere nearby. Mary told Luther that Nina desperately needed the job, and he agreed to hire her, but with one condition. He explained that all the women who had worked there before were unmarried and had no children. Nina, however, had brought her daughter with her. Nina quickly assured him that her daughter, Isabella, was very well behaved and would not cause any trouble. She promised that she would take care of both Luther and the house. A little later, Mary prepared to leave. Nina walked with her to the gate to say goodbye. But when she turned around, she noticed Luther staring at her in a very strange way. Before she could ask anything, Luther changed the subject and said, "Come, let me show you the house." As they reached the second floor, Nina froze. Hanging all across the wall were dozens of severed deer heads, staring down at her like trophies from some dark and terrifying past. Nina nervously asked, "Did you kill all of these?" With a proud grin, Luther answered, "Yes." He explained that hunting was his passion. He ate the meat of the animals and mounted their severed heads on the walls as trophies. Then Luther led her into another room where an old black and white photograph was hanging on the wall. When Nina asked about it, he said it was a picture of his great-grandfather's father, taken while the whole family was enjoying the harvest festival. The word harvest confused Nina, and she asked what it meant. Smiling strangely, Luther replied, "The harvest festival is coming very soon, and we'll all celebrate it together. Then you'll see for yourself what really happens during this festival." It was already late at night, so Luther told her, "You've traveled a long way. Go get some rest because we have a lot of work to do tomorrow." The next morning, the moment Nina opened her eyes, she realized Isabella was not in bed. Panic hit her instantly. She rushed downstairs, terrified, but finally let out a breath of relief when she saw Luther and Isabella calmly eating breakfast together. Feeling a little awkward, Nina apologized to Luther and promised that starting tomorrow she would wake up early and make breakfast herself. But Luther spoke gently. "It's your first day here. Just enjoy it." He had already prepared breakfast for her and invited her to sit at the table. While they were eating, Nina heard strange and horrifying noises coming from the basement. Luther quickly brushed it off. "Don't worry. The house is surrounded by forest, so wild animals often get into the basement." But Nina became suspicious because the sound didn't seem like an animal at all. Telling her to keep eating, Luther headed toward the basement, saying he would drive the animal away. Before leaving, he gave her a chilling warning. "If you want to stay alive, never step into the basement." After breakfast, Luther explained Nina's duties around the house. During their conversation, he mentioned that he preferred living alone, which was why he had never married. Later, while showing her the property, he pointed to a small cabin outside and said in a very stern voice, "This is my personal cabin. No one is allowed to enter it except me." That same night, Luther brought a piece of meat up from the basement and told Nina to cook it for dinner. Nina still wasn't feeling well, and she kept coughing continuously. Seeing Nina's condition, Luther made her a special herbal tea and told her that the moment she drank it, her cough would disappear completely. He said that when he was sick as a child, his father used to give him the exact same tea. Nina found it a little strange, but she drank it anyway. Surprisingly, it tasted good. But as soon as she finished the tea, her head started spinning, and she fell into an incredibly deep sleep. The next morning, Nina woke up feeling completely refreshed. Her sickness and cough were gone as if they had never existed. A little later, Luther came into her room and handed her the same tea again. This time, without any doubt, Nina happily drank it. As she drank, Luther stared at her in a very unsettling way, as if there was some dark secret hidden behind that tea. Within moments, Nina fell into another deep sleep. She couldn't understand what was mixed into the tea, but she ignored the feeling and tried to move on with her day. The next day, Nina was outside chopping firewood. Luther came over and told her that he had to go to the city for some important work. He asked her to take care of the house and drove away in his car. As soon as Luther left, a stranger came running toward the house, desperately asking Nina for help. Feeling threatened, Nina immediately grabbed her daughter, ran inside, and shouted through the door for the man to leave. That evening, when Luther returned, Nina told him everything that had happened. Luther warned her that the area was extremely dangerous. He said that if she ever saw a stranger near the house again, she should shoot first and ask questions later. When Nina admitted that she didn't know how to use a gun, Luther took her into the woods and started teaching her how to shoot. A group of deer stood in front of them, and Luther told Nina to shoot one of them. Nina had never killed anything in her life, and her hands began to tremble. Luther suddenly snapped and shouted, "If you want to protect your daughter, you must be ready to take a life." They returned home, but then the same man appeared again, begging for help. This time, Luther was there. Without hesitation, he struck the man hard on the head with the back of his gun, knocking him to the ground. Before Luther could kill him, the man cried out that he wasn't a threat. He said his name was Andres, that he had been passing through the forest, and that his car had broken down. He only needed help making a phone call. Hearing this, Luther began to think the man might be telling the truth, so he allowed him inside the house. Nina treated the wound on Andres's head, while Luther went into the kitchen to make tea for both of them. As soon as Luther left, Andres whispered to Nina, "That man almost killed me." Nina replied, "Luther is a little crazy, but he's not a bad person." Before long, Nina and Andres started getting along surprisingly well, and Luther noticed every second of it. Luther brought Andres a cup of tea and told him he could stay with them for 2 days. He explained that the town's harvest festival was happening in a couple of days, so Andres would get a chance to enjoy the party as well. Luther also promised that he would have his car repaired. Relieved and grateful, Andres happily accepted the invitation. Later that night, Luther went to bed while Nina stayed behind to clean the kitchen. Andres came in to help her. While they were cleaning, he found a bottle of liquor and offered Nina a drink. The two sat down together, drinking and talking. Andres asked if she was in a relationship with Luther. Nina immediately denied it and finally told him the truth about her legal troubles and how badly she needed money. But suddenly, Nina noticed a strange shadow moving behind the door. Frightened, she pointed it out to Andres. They checked the area, but there was no one there. Andres assumed the alcohol was making her imagine things. Just before going to sleep, Nina saw the same shadow again for a split second, and then it vanished. This time, she convinced herself it was only her imagination and went to bed. The next morning, Nina woke up and realized that her daughter was missing again. Panic took over. She ran through the entire house searching for Isabella, but neither the little girl nor Luther could be found. Nina felt the ground slip beneath her feet. Then she and Andres rushed outside, and in the distance, near the boundary of the property, they saw Isabella playing with Luther. Nina sprinted toward her daughter and pulled her into a tight embrace. At that moment, she noticed 3 people standing far away. They were wearing strange masks, and all of them were staring directly at her. Nina froze in terror. Before she could say anything to Luther, the three masked figures suddenly disappeared. Luther then turned furious. He scolded Nina and Andres for drinking his liquor without permission and warned them that nothing in his house would happen without his approval. After calming down, he told them that some special guests would be arriving that night and preparations needed to be made. A little later, Luther took Nina to his room. There, she noticed a book with a picture of a horned man on the cover, the exact same figure she thought she had seen in her hallucination the night before. The moment she opened the book, Luther angrily snatched it from her hands and said, "Don't touch my things without asking." Then he handed her a beautiful red dress and told her to wear it when the guests arrived. That night, the guests finally came. Nina got ready and went downstairs with her daughter. Luther introduced her to everyone, but she quickly realized that every single person was staring at her in a deeply disturbing way. Their expressions were cold, creepy, and intensely uncomfortable. Terrified, Nina took Andres upstairs. She whispered, "Something is seriously wrong here. These people aren't normal." Andres agreed. He told her, "Tomorrow, as soon as my car is fixed, we're getting out of here. And I'll help solve your money problems too." But Nina said she couldn't just break the contract and leave. If she did, she could end up in serious legal trouble. Just then, Luther came upstairs and told both of them to come down for the party. A little while later, Luther told Andres that his car had been repaired, and since the party was over, he was free to leave. He began leading Andres outside the garage. Nina wanted to go with them, but Luther ordered her to stay with the guests. Luther took Andres to the same private cabin that no one was allowed to enter, using the excuse of showing him the car. The moment Andres saw the horrifying scene inside, he let out a terrifying scream. When neither of them returned for a long time, Nina became worried. She stepped outside, calling Andres' name, but there was no sign of him anywhere. Suddenly, she saw the same masked man again, the one who had appeared before. In the blink of an eye, he vanished. Then Luther walked up behind her and calmly said that Andres had already left with his car. Nina was stunned. How could Andres leave without saying a single word? After that, Luther gave her the same herbal tea he always did. As soon as Nina drank it, she lost consciousness once again. While she was unconscious, blurry memories began flashing through her mind. For a few brief moments, she had opened her eyes and seen herself lying on a table, surrounded by people wearing strange ceremonial clothes, performing some horrifying ritual. The next morning, when Nina woke up, her clothes had been changed. She tried to convince herself that the terrifying scene from the night before had only been a nightmare. But while cleaning the floor of the hall, she noticed fresh bloodstains. At that moment, Nina's suspicion turned into certainty. Something truly monstrous was happening in this house. Luther wasn't home, so Nina secretly entered his room to find the truth. Inside a wardrobe, she discovered a wooden box. The moment she opened it, she was completely horrified. Inside were disturbing photographs showing people eating human flesh. Nina finally uncovered the terrible truth. Luther and the members of his community were killing people and eating them during the harvest festival. A book kept beside the box contained the full history of this terrifying cult-like community. Just as Nina was about to keep reading, she suddenly heard Luther returning. She quickly left everything as it was and ran downstairs. A moment later, she heard someone groaning in pain from the basement. Deep down, she was certain it was Andres. Terrified, Nina slowly started walking toward the basement. But before she could get there, Luther came out holding a blood-stained knife. He stared at her and gave a chilling warning. If she wanted to stay alive, she should never even look toward the basement. That night, after putting her little daughter to sleep, Nina secretly planned to go down there. But Luther was far more cunning than she expected. He was already waiting outside for her. He stopped her midway and gave her one final warning. The next day, Luther drove to the city for groceries. Gathering every bit of courage she had, Nina grabbed an axe and broke the basement lock. The moment she stepped inside, she let out a scream. Andres was tied to a chair, and Luther had brutally gouged out both of his eyes. Nina immediately untied him and, carrying her daughter, tried to escape through the forest. Andres was badly injured and could barely run. Before they could reach the highway, Luther suddenly arrived in his truck. He struck Nina with the back of his gun, knocking her unconscious. When Nina woke up, she was tied to bed. Luther forced her to drink tea. She refused, but he threatened that if she didn't drink it, he would do something to her daughter that she could never even imagine. To save her child, Nina drank the tea through tears, and within moments, she passed out again. Luther then took Isabella away with him. Later that night, Luther returned wearing the strange ceremonial mask used by his community. At that moment, Nina finally realized that the masked man she had been seeing was never a hallucination. It had been Luther all along. He dragged her to the bathroom and ordered her to wash herself for the festival. Then he told her that he was going to raise Isabella as his own daughter. Hearing this, Nina snapped and attacked him. But Luther overpowered her, shoved her into a bathtub filled with water, weakened her, and locked her back in the room. The next morning, when he brought food, Nina begged to see Isabella. Luther coldly replied, "Eat first, then I'll let you see her." Meanwhile, we discover the horrifying truth. Luther had killed Andres in the basement and was cutting up his body, preparing the meat for the night's feast. As night fell, all the members of the community gathered around a long dining table. Nina regained consciousness and found herself tied to the table. Sitting directly across from her was Mary, the same woman who had brought her here under the pretense of offering her a job. Mary was part of the cannibal cult all along, luring women into their trap. Luther began chanting from an old book while the others celebrated. When it was time to eat, he opened a large pot placed in the center of the table. Inside was Andres's cooked severed head. The cult members became excited at the sight. A woman sitting next to Nina tried to force her to drink blood, but Nina was so horrified and disgusted that she vomited on the spot. The entire room erupted in anger. They accused her of ruining their sacred festival, and the members began mocking Luther. Enraged, Luther dragged both Nina and Isabella down to the basement and tied them to the same chair where Andres had been held. As soon as Luther went upstairs, Nina managed to free herself with the help of her little daughter. She grabbed a sharp knife and a gun from a rack of weapons in the basement. At that moment, all of Nina's fear disappeared. The second she stepped outside, one of the cult members tried to stop her. Without hesitation, she shot him. The gunshot threw the entire house into chaos. Nina ran toward Luther's secret cabin. On the way, the traitorous Mary attacked her with a knife. But this time, Nina defended herself and slashed Mary across the throat. Mary collapsed in a pool of blood and died instantly. Nina rushed into the cabin and locked the door behind her. What she saw inside was beyond horrifying. Human body parts were hanging everywhere. She desperately searched for the car keys. Suddenly, Luther smashed the door open and charged inside. This time, Nina didn't back away. She fired at him, and the bullet struck his arm. Even injured, Luther was still stronger. He overpowered her and locked her inside a wooden box. Then he went looking for Isabella. Just as he found the little girl hiding inside a closet, Nina broke out of the box and attacked him from behind. During the struggle, the crown made of animal horns on Luther's head shattered and fell to the floor. Luther threw Nina down and began choking her. She was losing her breath, but she refused to give up. With her last bit of strength, she grabbed one of the sharp broken horns from the floor and drove it straight into Luther's neck. He screamed in agony and collapsed. Nina unleashed all of her rage, stabbing him again and again until he finally stopped breathing. The next morning, Nina placed Isabella safely in Luther's car and drove away from that nightmare forest forever. In the end, the film reveals a chilling message. In the deep forests of America, people disappear like this more often than anyone realizes. And sometimes, no one ever learns what truly happened to them. And with that, this terrifying survival story comes to an end. So friends, how did you like this story? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe to this channel for more.